Alors, bon matin, collègues. Today is meeting number 14 of the Standing Committee on Environment and Sustainable Development. This meeting is taking place in a hybrid format and is in public. We have witnesses' testimony for the full 2 hours. For those in person, please follow the health and safety guidelines on the cards found on your table to prevent audio and feedback incidents. Donc, j'ai quelques annonces sur le budget d'études. J'aimerais que le comité adopte 4 budgets que le greffier a distribués, ça fait quelques semaines, puisqu'il nous faut ces montants pour rembourser les témoins pour leurs coûts de comparution et couvrir nos propres logistiques. Le comité souhaite-t-il adopter un budget de 500 $ pour la réunion d'information avec Environnement et Changement climatique Canada? All in favor? Sorry about that. Well, I'll repeat. Est-ce que vous m'entendez bien?
Can you hear me loud and clear? Can you now hear me? Well, I will start all over. So I would like for the committee to adopt 4 budget suggestions distributed by the registrar for about 4 weeks now, because we need these amounts to refund our witnesses for the cost of appearing.
Nothing's coming through on the English channel.
This is the interpreter speaking. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Can the floor hear the interpreters? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. English channel, the interpreter speaking through the English channel. All right, good morning, everyone. I would love the committee to, well, maybe we'll start afresh. I hope everyone can hear me. Mr. Barnett?
Are you on the... Mr. Benet, you do hear me well? Excellent. Bon, on recommence.
Excellent. So I'll start afresh. I would like the committee to adopt 4 budgets that the clerk distributed a few weeks ago, as we need these amounts to reimburse witnesses for their appearance costs and to cover our own logistics. So, is it the committee's wish to adopt a budget of $500 for the information meeting with Environment and Climate Change Canada?
Tout le monde est d'accord?
Is everyone in agreement? Good. Then is it the committee's wish to adopt a budget of $500 for the information meeting with the Canadian Impact Assessment Agency and the Canadian Water Agency? Is everyone in agreement? Then, does the committee wish to adopt a budget to the tune of $47,700 for the study of the electric vehicle availability standard? Yes, everybody is in agreement. And now, is it the committee's wish to adopt a budget of $49,500 for the study of the effectiveness, potential improvements, and capacity of Canada's 2030 emissions reduction plan? Everybody in agreement? Thank you very much. So I think I just lost what? I think I lost a bet, and I now owe you a coffee, because I thought Mr. Leslie was going to contest at least one of the amounts. So I would have shared that coffee with you.
Okay.
All right, then. The committee begins its study of the central habitat of the copper red horse in the Verchères Islands. And today the committee meets with the following witnesses.
Associate Deputy Minister by video conference. Impact Assessment Agency of Canada, Patricia Brady, Madame Elisabeth Gilles, and Mr. Bram Sepiers. From Major Projects Office, Don Farrell. L'administration portuaire de Montréal, Madame Julien Baudry, Monsieur Julien Baudry, excusez-moi.
Mr. Julien Baudry, I apologize. And Miss Nathalie Loubière. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Opening statements from the Agency of Canada, Montreal, Port of Montreal, and Major Project Office. Chaque allocuteur aura 5 minutes pour leur allocution.
Each speaker will have 5 minutes for their statements.
Pendant que vous êtes en train de répondre,
And during the question and answer period, or while you will be giving your opening statement, I will raise this card to indicate that you have 1 minute left so that you can complete your answer or your statement. And when I flip this, I'll kindly ask that you try to conclude your sentence so that I don't have to interrupt you rather. So we'll start, if I'm not mistaken, with Ms. Brady. Over to you for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, honorable members. My name is Patricia Brady, and I'm the Vice President of Strategic Policy and Programs at the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada. I'm joined here by my colleagues Bram Sepiers, who's the Executive Director of Communications at the agency, and on screen, Elisabeth Gill, who is the Regional Director of our Quebec Regional Office. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're on the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe-Algonquin Nation. Nous sommes ravis de comparaître devant le comité aujourd'hui.
We are delighted to appear before the committee today to present information on the environmental assessment for the extension project for the port terminal expansion project at Contrecoeur, and on the provisions in the Impact Assessment Act relating to projects on federal lands, which are applicable separately to the compensation project. The Impact Assessment Act sets out impact assessment requirements for major projects. Those projects are listed in regulations under the act called the project list. The list includes only major projects, and since 2019, only about 9 projects per year have met the thresholds in the list to be subject to the federal assessment process. The Port Terminal Expansion Project at Contrecoeur is a major project and was assessed under the IAA's predecessor legislation, the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act of 2012. This assessment, which included Indigenous consultation and public participation, concluded in February 2021, and with the Minister of Environment's report and decision issued on March 1, 2021, which included conditions to mitigate adverse effects, including a habitat compensation plan related to the copper red horse.
Subject to provisions of the Impact Assessment Act, which apply to projects that aren't designated on the project list that are carried out on federal lands, such as national parks, military bases, and First Nations reserves. Those requirements are separate and very different than the requirements for major designated projects under the Act. To give you a sense of volume, more than 1,000 non-designated projects are subject to these federal lands requirements each year, and they include a broad range of project types of varying sizes, such as constructing office buildings and hospitals, installing wharves and breakwaters, replacing culverts, and installing water treatment systems. For those types of projects on federal lands, relevant federal authorities are responsible for determining the potential environmental effects of the project. The Impact Assessment Agency has no role in those determinations under the Act. There are more than 75 federal authorities in total, including departments, agencies, crown corporations, ports and airport authorities, among others. Under the Act, before undertaking a project on federal lands or authorizing or funding one, the federal authority must first determine whether a project could cause significant adverse environmental effects. This includes a requirement for public transparency. At a minimum, a notice called a Notice of Intent must be posted on the Impact Assessment Registry, inviting the public to provide comments. Federal authorities have broad discretion to decide how they'll make their determination, including the information they need or additional public engagement activities given the specific project circumstances. IAC's role in federal lands assessments is limited. Its two main functions are first to provide guidance to federal authorities about their obligations under the IAA in respect of these federal land provisions, and second, to host information on the authorities' federal lands assessments on the Canadian Impact Assessment Registry, which IAC maintains, though each federal authority has their own account and makes postings to the registry directly. Thanks again for the opportunity to be here, and my colleagues and I would be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Brady. La parole est à vous, Madame Julie Gascon.
Over to Ms. Julie Gascon for 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Good morning, dear committee members. Thank you for the opportunity for talking to you about the expansion project at Contrecoeur. This is a generational project that addresses the needs of Quebec and Canada. Each day, workers at the Montreal port support thousands of jobs, exporters, manufacturers, and ensure that essential products arrive everywhere across the country. But in order to continue playing this role, we need to step up our capacity and act immediately because it takes 5 years to build a terminal. The Contrecoeur project will generate 3,770,000 jobs during construction and over 10,000 jobs in operations. Even better, it would support over 400,000 jobs thanks to the merchandise that it will transit through its ports. It will notably use Canadian materials and is based on existing infrastructure like the existing railway lines as well as the Highway 30 that provides access to 66% of the Canadian population and 65% of the manufacturing capacity across the country. On the environmental part, it is a project that is well supported across the country across decades. These conditions require consultation with federal, provincial, and First Nations authorities, and that is what we have done to the satisfaction of each of the parties. We conducted a consultation process that was transparent and continuous. In 2012, the first community meetings followed by public hearings based on an impact assessment report between 2016 and 2019. In March 2021, the Minister of Environment and Climate Change issued a favorable opinion supported with 387 conditions. In May 2024, tabling license requests to fisheries and oceans. In 2024, presenting a feasibility study in order to construct infrastructure with First Nations and federal government and provincial authorities to cities, municipalities, both regional and counties, regional councils, environmental councils from Montérégie to cover based in Richelieu at the priority intervention area from the Seigneurie and at Nature Conservation Canada. On April 29, 2025, publication of the intention to look at the environmental effects and steps to protect the copper red horse. In July 2025, notification to the agency for preparatory work in order to build the terminal. In October 2025, securing permission for compensatory steps. By accomplishing this project, this allows us to carry on with the project without skipping any steps. And the reason here is simple. The permits from Fisheries and Oceans was tabled for the first time in 2012. And following the changes in the law in 2019, we had to restart the process, and we committed together with the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada, which issued a decision in 2021 with 387 conditions. It's important to understand that the declaration of the decision by the Impact Assessment Agency was as a result of a recommendation from Fisheries and Oceans to issue licenses inconsistent with the law on threatened species. In 2024, 2024, we completed all the work, and in May 2024, we resubmitted an application for a license based on the changes in the law in 2019. We respected all the deadlines as well as all the stages required in consistency with law. For over 10 years, we have been conducting or planning 7 compensation plans and 24 follow-up programs. Among the key flagship measures, the creation of 27.7 hectares of land area in order to protect species, constructing new green areas and building new habitat for water species as well as other bird species, and several fish species and amphibians, the use of electrical and hybrid equipment in order to reduce emissions and noise pollution.
Transport. Time is up. Okay.
Last sentence.
Maritime shipping and avoid thousands of additional truck kilometers to U.S. port. If we lack capacity, importers and exporters will rely on the next best option, and for us, it's the Port of New York. Our objective is clear: to lead by example, showing that economic growth and environmental protection can reinforce each other.
Merci, Madame Gascon.
Thank you, Madame Gascon.
Mrs. Dawn Farrell, sorry.
Good afternoon. My name is Dawn Farrell. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Major Projects Office. Thank you for having me here to discuss the Contrecoeur Terminal Container Project. As you know, the office was established around 2 months ago. On September 11th, the Contrecoeur Terminal Container Project was referred to the Major Projects Office as part of the first set of projects referred by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister announced last week the second set of projects. We are maintaining the pace and working diligently to find the best path forward for these nation-building projects. Projects being referred to the office are the kind of major projects that will build Canada, the kind of projects Canada needs to connect our economy, diversify our industries and trade opportunities, and create high-paying careers while protecting the environment and upholding the rights of Indigenous peoples. Our office has been working closely with the Government of Canada, provinces and territories, industry, proponents, and Indigenous peoples to evaluate projects that would offer the greatest benefits for Canadians and that we can move quickly on to meet the moment. Major projects have been brought forward in a number of ways, included by proponents, Indigenous groups, premiers through First Ministers meetings, and many other ways through federal departments and ministers. Once a project is referred to our office, we work with proponents, provinces and territories, and Indigenous peoples to find the right path forward for each project. Depending on the type of project and its stage of development, as well as its status, requirements, and milestones, this could include many options, including options that focus on streamlining permitting processes and structuring financing. Many of the projects referred to the office will not be designated under the Building Canada Act. Designation is just one tool the office may recommend, but regulatory streamlining and financing can be accomplished in many ways. We seek the best course of action to advance a given project quickly, so the proponents are provided the certainty they need to make their important investment decisions. With regard to Contrecoeur, at the time it was referred to the office, this project was well advanced in the federal regulatory system, as you've heard today, including having completed federal environmental assessment. Since then, the work of the office has primarily been focused on structuring financing for the project to ensure that investment decisions can be made. We understand that a federal land assessment under the Impact Assessment Act was conducted for Contrecoeur compensatory measures for the Copper Red Horse, and that this committee may have questions around this process. The office did not play a role in this assessment. As the entities responsible for conducting this federal lands assessment, Environment and Climate Change Canada and Fisheries and Oceans Canada would be best placed to answer questions this committee may have. It's my pleasure to answer any questions you may have about related to the Major Projects Office here today. Thank you.
And we will start now with the Conservative Party for 6 minutes. Mr. Ross, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my first question is to Ms. Elizabeth Gill. This project, you said, was basically approved in 2021, but now we're really looking at outstanding fisheries permits as per new legislation. How many permits are we looking at that need approval for this new amendment?
I can start that, but I think perhaps Madame Gascon would be better placed to comment on any outstanding permits. I understand the Fisheries Act authorization, though, that was outstanding was granted just a couple of weeks ago in October. And whether or not there are other federal permits, I'll let my colleagues from the port respond to that.
Thank you, Mrs. Brady. Madame Loubier, can you go over the 2 permits? We've received the first one, and what's the outstanding permit that's left?
Okay. Can I do in French or both or both? Okay. My choice? Okay. The first permit that we receive, it's a DFO permit. It's for the compensation for the copper red horse. So this one, we receive it on October 2025.
Are you talking about offsets, environmental offsets?
Yeah, it's an offset.
You are. So that's where my question is leading to, is the environmental offsets that you're talking about, is that in specific relation to the copper red horse habitat?
Yeah.
Is it proven that that compensation will actually benefit the copper red horse, or is it something that we're trying to trial?
Okay. So the first permit is really related to the compensation work that we will be doing for the copper red horse. So over the last, I would say, many, many months, we've been working hand in hand with our colleagues at the Department of Fisheries and Ocean, but also with our colleague at the provincial level to evaluate whether or not the compensation work that we are proposing was going to work. And this was done in full collaboration. And the goal here would be to compensate at l'Île aux Bœufs, which is a little bit of a, there's 2 little islands that are north of Contrecoeur that are...
Actually, let me interrupt you there because I read the report, but what my specific question was there any studies done to show that the offsets would actually benefit the copper red horse directly, or is this just a trial to see if it will benefit? Because we are talking about a species at risk here.
So Vas-y, Nathalie.
OK, là, je vais y aller en français. Donc, vous voulez savoir si le projet de compensation à l'Île aux Bœufs va compenser pour les herbiers qui vont être impactés par le projet. Oh.
Can the floor hear the interpretation? Can the floor hear the interpretation? Mr. Chair, if you'll allow me, I don't know if the witness is aware of the fact that they can use interpretation, simultaneous interpretation. It doesn't appear to me that they understand that. So you read the assessment report on environmental effects, the one that you talked about, because there are several reports that have been tabled to oceans and fisheries, in which and among which you have the feasibility studies, which shows that the studies conducted will be able to make up for the environmental species that will be affected. So you have aerodynamic models that have been established, and there have been several studies conducted to show that the project will be operational, like it can work.
You're talking about helping out the Canadian government in terms of regulatory streamlining, but the only streamlining we seem to need here is the Department of Fisheries and Oceans permits and authorizations, and I've worked with DFO. They are very risk averse. They are very meticulous. And so how is your office going to work with Department of Fisheries office in terms of the regulatory streamlining you spoke of?
Yes, thank you for the question. In this case, almost exclusively the work for Contrecoeur will be on the financing of the project. We need about $2.3 billion to finish building Contrecoeur. So we're working with their offices to arrange that financing through several agencies, and that's where most of the work is. In terms of regulatory streamlining, no, we do not see a need to do that work. The Port of Montreal is well ahead in that work and has already undertaken most of that work. So we do not see any regulatory streamlining there at this point.
This permit requirement from DFO, you'll just allow the regular.
Yeah, currently their regular time frame is working, and you can ask Ms. Gascon how she feels about that. But currently, we see that most of the work with them will be on the financing.
If there's no fast tracking, can I get the permits are expected to be approved by DFO?
So, sir, we've received the letter of completion of our file in August of this year. As Mrs. Louvier indicated, there's 2 permits that are needed. The first permit was received in October of this year, and the second permit is expected in November.
1 minute. Okay, well, I'll probably leave this here as a placeholder for later on, but my next round of questioning will be around treaty rights and Aboriginal rights and title. And so I'll probably ask that question with the Impact Assessment Agency, and then later on transfer that over to the Major Projects Office. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. For 6 minutes, Mrs. Midima.
Thank you to all of the witnesses for coming. The Impact Assessment Agency of Canada. The report states that the new dredging area would be within the range and critical habitat of the copper red horse, and specifies that all the changes will be analyzed and flagged as required, and any authorizations issued by the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. Can you tell critical habitat in by the new dredging area, and maybe a bit on how, like, the methodology used for this mapping?
I'm afraid on the area affected, but the port may be able to answer that question.
Yes, hi. So in terms of the number of grass bed that exists right now in the St. Lawrence, where the copper red horse eats, there's 30,000 hectares. The project will intervene and impact 2.34 hectares total. So 2.34 hectares out of the 30,000 hectares that exist in the St. Lawrence River. Horse feeds, not the habitat where the copper red horse reproduce, which is in the Richelieu River.
Okay. And will the new habitat, the compensated new habitat, be created before the dredging? This question is best for Ms. Brady or
I can answer that question as well. So all of the compensation work will be done ahead of the project. So the intent is that we will be putting 3.24 hectares of grass bed in an area called L'Île aux Bœufs, which is a little bit north, same corridor, but a little bit north of Contrecoeur. And so it's great because the compensation work that we're doing is achieving 2 things. These little islands are also impacted by shore erosion, so we will be building kind of a wall, like a dig, we say in French, that will slowly impact a little bit the flow of the current, giving good chances for the grass bed to grow. We will also do a lot of cleanup because there's sunken ducks and a whole bunch of debris there, so we'll be doing a lot of cleanup around those islands and give those islands a chance as well. And within 10 years, the grass bed that we will have planted, a little bit when you do your garden, you plant with enough distance so that the plant can grow, will have double within 6 years, and it will have triple within 15 years to almost 12.64 hectares, I think.
Okay, excellent. And can you tell me how this created new habitat is going to be monitored, and And what would happen if the monitoring shows that the habitat isn't functioning as intended?
So as part of our compensation work and the 387 conditions that we have a lot of follow-up programs that allows us to look at everything from the trees that we are planting, the habitat for the starlings, the habitat for the frog, the grass bed for the copper red horse. We had to follow, and we have to make sure that they take hold. And the great thing about dealing with the Port of Montreal is 200 years old. We are a federal institution, and if something was to happen, we would continue to support and help to ensure that the grass bed holds well. And we do have experience. We created a 27.7 hectare fish habitat around les îles de Boucherville, so we probably are within the country a really strong, knowledgeable entity of the copper red horse. And just to put in perspective rapidly, by the time we're done building Contrecoeur, the Port of Montreal will have invested $17 million in the compensation plan for the copper red horse. But I mentioned before in my response that this is the feeding area. So the grass bed has these little crustaceans that stay there. It's a kind of big feeding area for them where they go. It's a fish that lives about 35 years. It spawns in the Richelieu River and in the Chambly Basin. And just to remind everyone that where this little fish spawn and lives his first 2 years of his life before they go to their feeding habitat in the St. Lawrence and then come back year after year for 35 years in the Richelieu. There is no speed limit in the Chambly Basin, and they spawn normally in the dead of summer. So that's where most of the pleasure craft are operating, of course, there. We are also working with the producer, the agriculturing community as well, in terms of, because that's also when they put the fertilizer in, there's a lot of chemicals. So we've worked with them to reduce the amount of chemical going in. So with our 17 million, we're building the biggest fridge and the biggest, food area for them as much as we can. But we'll need to work in collaboration to address where it spawns, because I think we need to look at this little fish on its entire. It's been at risk for 20 years, well before the port. So we'll need to work in collaboration with others to support this species.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you.
6 minutes. La parole est à vous, Monsieur Bonnet. Merci, Madame Gascon.
Over to you, Mr. Benet, for 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for appearing here and maybe addressing the agency. In your opinion, essentially, when we look at what has happened with this situation, there are two challenges, some technical issues. There's the notice of public intention for compensation that disappeared, and there was no alert in order to inform the public of these consultations. Would you say that the consultation process was exemplary and actually encouraged public participation? Good morning, sir. I could address that question.
It was for a period of just over 30 days to May 30th.
My question
is, do you think it's an exemplary process the way it was conducted with all the challenges? In terms of our obligations, Mr. Burney, from a legal standpoint, the Montreal Port really followed by the letter its obligations. Now, in terms of the alert, the notices, I asked all my employees to register, and you really need to follow the registration process, but the alerts were out. But is this an exemplary process? And I'd like to get an answer from the agency where there was no notice and people were not informed.
Meeting their obligations. But in this case, the notice of intent was in fact posted. That's the only requirement in the Act, and so it was done. I do believe the Port undertook other consultation activities and public hearings that the Port could comment on that would have added to and amplified the public consultation notice that was put on our registry.
Okay. Est-ce qu'il y a eu
were there any comments as part of these consultations? Good morning. Thank you for the question. With regard to the exemplary nature of our measures, as it was mentioned, we followed to the letter the requirements and even went beyond what was required for public events. Were there any comments? Yes, during our open door activities. I mean, I'm talking about consultations, be they online, public, under the law. So as part of consultations, were there any comments? We did not receive any comments. No comments for such a process? Well, our process followed the process from April 29 with a 30-day period and an extension period because there was no decision for October. So you had 2 periods of consultation. Is that right? We put out a notice which respects the deadlines prescribed by the law, which is 30 days. And after this period, we continue to engage with the public and to address questions, especially through public events that were broadcast over the radio and in the media openly. Well, that's consultation. That's why you gave us information. You talked about August 29, but that's not really the consultation phase here. Well, it's more an issue of definition of what consultation is. If consulting and addressing questions for us, it's an opportunity to consult. So we respected the period spelled out by the law. So, in your opinion, destroying the habitat of a disappearing species or a threatened species, could this have a negative effect on the environment? In your opinion? You're asking the question. We will be working on 2.34 hectares of the feeding space of the Copperhead Red Horse. That's not my question, ma'am. I'm asking the question is because I'd like to get an answer. So, is the destruction of the essential habitat of a species that is threatened by extinction, is this really the best thing to do for the environment? Well, I think that question is best addressed to fisheries and oceans. It's not up to the Montreal port to address that question. We are not the authority here. So in your opinion, you're saying that it's right, it's proper that you destroy its natural habitat? No, I'm saying that this question is best addressed to fisheries and oceans. Our role is to take the necessary steps and to roll out a project that followed the different consultation processes and requirements. So because the law provides for this, and we're talking about disappearing species, did you think about alternatives or projects that would have fewer or slightly less impact on the environment? And if yes, what other sites did you consider? So before you address the question, Nathalie, maybe we should bear in mind that the Contrecoeur terminal, we shifted it to the west as much as possible in order to mitigate the impact. So are there any alternative sites that were studied for the compensatory project? Well, in May 2022, 4 potential sites were examined and assessed, L'Île aux Bœufs, L'Île aux Prunes, and the eastern part of the Bouchard Islands and the Uktu Island. And when we conducted the feasibility studies, the characterization of the seabeds, the grass beds that were studied, there were no grass beds in order to build dikes. And to address your question, in 2022, I'll stop you there because the law provides that if you request a compensation project and as part of the regulatory process, you have to table your project. And did you table anything in this case? Thank you, Mr. Bonnet. Mr. Bonnet, your time is up. So request that kindly that for all the members that you should please ask your questions and allow the witnesses time to address because the interpreters have a hard time interpreting when there's many people speaking at the same time. I know that there's a lot to be said. There are many questions, so please try to be as specific as possible in order to get a specific response as well. So please bear in mind that there's interpretation going on as well. Thank you. Mr. Leslie, over to you for 5 minutes.
Did you approach the federal government to be referred to the MPO?
The project was referred to the MPO. No, we did not approach.
Did the federal government approach you about it?
The Contrecoeur project was deemed a project of significant importance, and because of the categorization of the project, we were referred to the MPO, and we've engaged with the MPO ever since.
So when did you find out that you were being referred to the MPO? And who told you this information?
Monsieur le député, donc nous avons...
So we were informed during the period before the official announcement of the status of this this referral to the major projects office. So about 24 hours before the announcement.
Advised a date announcement from the federal government that, hey, despite not talking to us in any way, despite you not coming to us, we're deeming you referred to the major projects office for a project that's been underway since first applied in 2016. Is that correct? Does that seem odd that out of the blue you were just referred without asking to be referred?
Well, there was a lot of consultation and a lot of work that was done, and this could be a question that could be asked for much higher people than me, but there was a lot of discussion as to which project would be deemed to provide an essential contribution as a major project, a project of national interest.
In order to find out whether or not you would meet that criteria, what information did you provide to the government and when?
We've been working with the government of Canada for years on this project.
But the government lives in silos,
sir.
right? Like it's highly unlikely that the government was able to collate all this great information. So I'm very curious what information in the immediate lead up to being referred you provided the government of Canada.
Sorry, sir, but then the work that was done for the Contrecoeur project is the work over decades. We've been working with Fisheries and Ocean, with Transport Canada, with Finance Canada, with various departments. We had meetings with multiple departments at the same time. People were very well aware, the departments were very well aware of the importance of this project, very well aware of the work that has been carried out with this project. And by referring us to the MPO, it allowed us to continue the work, as Mrs. Farrell has clearly stated, to finalize and structure our financing. Okay. What the major project allows us to do is to have a conversation with all of the departments, bringing everybody together to ensure that we move forward as a federal public service and as a federal project, of course, in a concise and rigorous manner.
So you were moving ahead with this project. The government passes Bill C-5, which you have said you don't think you're going to need to use, despite there being one outstanding permit still. So I'm curious of two things. One, if that permit is not approved, will you go to the MPO to have that overturned vis-a-vis the powers under Bill C-5? And since you were planning this project entirely without the MPO, what exactly are you expecting them to do for you other than this newfound offer to get you money?
So in terms of the work that we've done to receive our permits, our file was completed in August. So in August, we received a letter L. We received our first permit in October. We finalized all of our consultation with our First Nation and with all of the stakeholders involved in the decisions for the permit, and all points to the fact that the second permit will be received in November. And Mrs. Farrell may be better than me to answer this question, but my understanding of the major project office is that, yes, they are provisioned to accelerate project, that's one thing, but they're also acting as an important one-stop shop for a project. So if I have a problem or if I have an issue, I go directly to the MPO, who organizes and supports us in terms of meeting, innovative ways of financing, innovative way of looking at things.
What are those innovative ways of financing? It was mentioned that there would be various sources under the MPO that they would find. I assume that's entirely, as a federally regulated port authority, entirely public money. How were you going to pay for this project? You were about to start building it anyways, and now the MPO has swooped in with a promise to discover new funds of taxpayer money from across various departments. How are you going to build the project before this?
At this point, I cannot speak of the financing structure for the project because we are in negotiation.
Well, is it funded right now?
Time's up. At this particular moment, we're discussing with the MPO and the various departments that are involved what would be the best structure to finance this project.
Merci, Madame Gascon. Merci, Monsieur Leslie.
Thank you, Madame Gascon, Mr. Leslie, Mr. Van Joon. Over to you for 5 minutes.
Can you clarify for this committee the difference between a project being referred to the Major Projects Office versus being a project in the national interest, and what your role is, your office's role is in each of those cases?
Yes, thank you for the question. When you look at, there are major projects and there are major projects that are in the national interest. Major projects that are referred to us are in various degrees of development. Some of them, like Contrecoeur, are almost all the way through their regulatory process, and there's not much help that they need there. But in terms of the question around financing, we are working with these federal projects to look to see how to coordinate financing from, for example, the Canada Infrastructure Bank, the Canada Growth Fund, and also looking at are there other private sources of capital that can be used to ensure that the Port of Montreal has sufficient funds to continue to build and finish the project in a timely manner. And that's work that's underway, and we expect to be finishing that work soon. And we're working closely with Ms. Gascon and her team. In other cases, projects can be sent to us as designated projects. And the differentiation there is those projects would be earlier on. Those projects need a decision about whether or not they should be built in advance of all the work that needs to be done to coordinate the regulatory First Nations and the work that needs to be done on the financing. So far, at this point, we have not had any projects that have come through the Act as designated projects. Most of the projects we're working on are in various states of development. But we do expect over the course of time that one or two projects of national interest will be designated. And at that point, there is a single process that allows for a single minister to use we still end up going through all the different departments to do all the work. There's no corner cutting, but it's a bit of a two-step process where a decision is made that the project is in the national interest, and then a 2-year process is undertaken to end up with one permit and one set of conditions for all the different agencies that are involved.
So that being the case, is it correct to say that all of the regulatory obligations that exist for Contrecoeur are the same as they would have been had this process begun 5-10 years ago?
Currently, all of the regulatory processes that the Port of Montreal has been through with Contrecoeur are well underway, well understood. The permits are close to being completed. There's one more permit, as I understand it, in November. I do not anticipate, or our office does not anticipate, that there's any need for any additional assistance there. And we see the same thing on a number of fronts. What is needed, though, is the final financing package so that Ms. Gascon and her team have the certainty that they need to finish the waterworks that they're undertaking, to finish the agreements that they're undertaking, and to start the major part of the project, which will be finished in 5 years. The other work that we will do with the Port of Montreal and their team is to ensure that as they go through the construction process, that they have the streamlining they need so that we do meet the objectives of the build within the time frame that she intends to build in. And that the project does stay on budget and on time.
Ms. Gascon, can you please outline us in about 40 seconds the economic impact and the strategic importance of expanding the Port of Montreal?
Is that question for, yeah.
expansion project during the construction is 3,770 jobs. After the terminal is in operation is 10,000 jobs, and it supports over 400,000 jobs. What the phase one of Contrecoeur project, or this phase for the Contrecoeur project, brings, it is increased the capacity of the Port of Montreal by 60%. So the capacity of the terminal will be 1.15 million TEU. TEUs are 20-foot equivalents or containers.
Thank you, Madame Gascon. Thank you, Mr. Fanjoy. Et Monsieur Bonnet, la parole est à vous pour 2 points.
Mr. Bannon, over to you for 2.5 minutes. So, was an alert sent or not regarding the compensatory project? No alert. So, the port administration, are you comfortable with this? You claim to want proper consultations, that there was no alert that was sent on such an important consultation process. So we tabled in the past several requests under the agency's registry. We rarely receive comments. Are you comfortable with this? Of course, we would like to have comments, but it's not up to us to determine whether we should have received comments or not. But the process was respected. There was no comments because there were no alerts. Would you be comfortable to redo the consultation process and to ensure that you have comments? Because we know that there are people out there who want to make comments. The documents were published online and people could have made their comments. Would you be comfortable to go through that process again, considering that there were no alerts and no comments? I mean, such a process would have significant financial consequences and delays in the project. So, well, it's not important enough to protect the copper red horse, but for you, the financial costs or penalty would be more important than protecting these copper red horse species. Well, what I'm saying is that we respected the states. So we respected the law. So you would be more concerned about the financial consequences than protecting the copper red horse species. That's not what I'm saying. So you're saying that, are you saying that you're ready to redo these consultations in order to ensure that there's no impact? Well, I think we followed the law. We followed the letter of the law. My question is, are you ready or not? Well, we followed the process. So the answer is no. Well, I think I have my response now. Well, I'm waiting for simple answers and I'm not getting them. Sorry. So you said you now have the license for compensatory measures for endangered species. I'm looking at the registry here, and it says that if you have a license, it has to appear on the registry. But for weeks now, you don't have that license published in the registry. Does it mean that you don't have it? Are you talking about the registry for endangered species? Well, for that, you need to talk with Fisheries and Oceans. Well, you know that your license is not valid right now because it doesn't appear on the registry, right? So I'd like to bring us back to you securing that license. It says that you need to obtain that license in the event that your project is going to affect or endanger species. Did you present alternative site assessments to Fisheries and Oceans? Yes, we did that in the feasibility studies and also in the pre-project study that was presented here and mentioned during this hearing. Thank you.
And Steve for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Mrs. Farrell questions with respect to the Major Projects Office. You talked about in your opening statements the different ways that projects are referred, but is there any independent oversight of how your office prioritizes or manages files, or is this all handled internally and behind closed doors?
Internally to the government, you mean, or internally? Yeah, in terms of, there's lots and lots of projects, as you know, in the country. There is a process. This project was referred to us by the Department of Transportation, and primarily for the reason that we've stated, to ensure that we could arrange the financing and make sure that Ms. Gascon had everything she needs to be able to build the project on time and on budget. We do an evaluation.
didn't have any independent oversight. You mentioned...
Well, we are...
Some of these projects are coming in through meetings with premiers, correct?
The projects come in a variety of ways. They come from the government, they come from the provinces, they come from proponents, they come from First Nations.
The Prime Minister was in Newfoundland and Labrador, and he met with the then Liberal Premier John Hogan. And in a public press conference, he talked about two specific projects, the Beta Nord project and the Churchill project, and he described them both as nation-building projects. And afterwards, on September the 11th, the then Liberal Premier John Hogan was interviewed about those meetings, and he was very confident that these two projects were going to end up on the list. Fast forward, provincial election, new premier, and the projects are nowhere to be found. Newfoundland and Labrador is left out in the cold. So wouldn't that all prove a certain political nature to who gets picked to be on this list?
The projects come into our office. We do an evaluation, initially a desktop evaluation of all the different attributes of the projects. And as well, we have meetings with the different project proponents. We do have the ability to recommend to the Prime Minister which projects we think are ready for referral and which projects maybe there's additional work to do. As far as I'm concerned, in terms of the projects that eventually get referred to us, they do meet the standard that I would believe makes sense for projects of either major projects that should be referred or projects of national interest. And there are many projects that are still being evaluated by our office and will be announced as we go ahead. Currently, we are just in...
Considered right now, currently?
Yes, absolutely. And there are... The ones
that are currently being reviewed, particularly in Newfoundland and Labrador? Can you provide us with some documentation to back that up?
I don't know. I mean, if the projects are currently being evaluated, I would have to take it under advisement as to whether or not we would provide projects that are currently under evaluation for you. But I can tell you that currently under evaluation are a number of projects from across Canada that are projects that are either infrastructure or major projects that add value to our trade that are being evaluated, and we're evaluating them within strategies and within all of the criteria under the Building Canada's Act.
The committee would have a vested interest in seeing some of these projects that are being considered. So if you could provide us with a list, we would all really appreciate that. I recently had a meeting with the Port of Corner Brook, actually, when I was in my riding for Constituency Week. And one of the concerns that they brought forward is they have a very strong business case to advance their port, but they're concerned that these projects, this project in Montreal might actually, hurt them in terms of their ability to move their project forward. What's your response to that?
Are you talking about the Contrecoeur project? Yeah. I mean, again, if you look at individual projects that we're working on right now, they're fairly advanced projects, and there are already very strong business cases that those projects will benefit Canada. So when you step back from it, there are about 500 projects in the system right now. We've had 11 referred to us. There are also 400 projects that are in various government departments or with the provinces. They are not stopping as a result of the Major Projects Office. Our job is to advance the projects that come to us, and as we do our work, to also share that work so that other projects can move along as well. Not every project in Canada will come through the Major Projects Office.
Mrs. Farrell. Mr. Grant, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank everybody for attending today. I would just like to start by saying that I am from the other coast, Vancouver, right by Delta, where another major expansion is being proposed, Roberts Bank Terminal 2. Which I was a part of a number of meetings before I became a member of Parliament here, meeting with IAC and meeting with the Vancouver Port Authority as one of the major deal with was integration and consultation with Indigenous communities. There's over 40 that we had to be consulted with in the expansion of RBT2. I know there are not as many on this one, but I just wanted to ask what was done and the consultation. How many groups and what did you hear back, and how are you integrating that into this proposal? I'll ask with IAC and then also with the port as well.
So the port might have better numbers on the total number of nations that were consulted, but certainly that would have been part of the environmental assessment that was completed in 2021. And the conclusion of that was that there weren't going to be significant adverse effects in environmental effects of the project, taking into account mitigation measures that were established through conditions. Those mitigation measures include requirements to continue working with First Nations, including on the compensation plan, which I understand the port has done. And I'll maybe turn it over to the port to provide a bit more detail on the numbers.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your question. The Port of Montreal has a long-standing relationship with the First Nations. There's 3 major First Nations that are in our surrounding, and we had over 80 meetings with the Mohawk Council of Kanawake on the Contrecoeur project in the last a few years, and certainly many meetings in the last year alone. And what I can tell you is that from the First Nations perspective, we've received their support on the project, including recently from the Council of Kanawake. So they're working with us. They're part of the fabric of everything we do in terms of our consultation, in terms of also their interest, their benefit into the project. And we're keeping them apprised of all of our work.
One of the major issues for RBT2 was, of course, habitat restoration or habitat mitigation. You're talking about this with respect to the fish that are at stake here. I just wanted to know if there are any examples that can be pointed to where this sort of movement of fish to another area has been successful, because that's something that we wanted to ensure when we were talking about sturgeon and salmon at the mouth of the Fraser River. Is there any examples where this has been a successful reintegration?
For the Port of Montreal, are you talking about all of the species for which we have compensation, or just for the red copper horse?
No, I'm just talking about another example from this country or around the world where this sort of happened before, where a project was deemed necessary and then moved, and then finding new habitat for that.
I wouldn't be able to tell you, sir, but maybe Nathalie. Oh yes. So one of the big work that we have done in 2012 is we've constructed 27.7 acres of fish habitat in what we call les îles de Boucherville, which are owned, of course, by the Crown and that are kept natural. And this habitat is working really well. In the case of the red copper red horse, we have seen this fish. We had some follow-up that we needed to provide to the environmental department to see whether or not the fish was using this habitat for feeding, and it was seen. The last time that we did this review was in 2019, this submission, because after that, it was demonstrated that the habitat was working well. But that was one example for the Port of Montreal where we built 27.7 hectares of habitat for the fish.
Just wanted to follow up with respect to your answer on Indigenous compensation. Transfer of Indigenous knowledge, being able to practice their cultures. Is this something that has been taken into account with respect to approval of this project?
Absolutely. I'll pass my colleague Julien's work very closely with our First Nations.
Our responsibility goes beyond the project. Actually, we do have an ongoing relationship with First Nation to be part of the truth and reconciliation effort in this country. So we use, namely, our cruise industry and our own spaces to promote this truth and reconciliation and the Indigenous culture.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Merci, Monsieur Baudry, Madame Gascon.
Thank you, Mr. Baudry, Madame Gascon. Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, witnesses. I appreciate all of you being here today, online and in person. I would I want to follow back with the Port of Montreal on one question about financing. If the MPO didn't exist, would the project have been funded?
So at this particular moment, as you may be aware, there were several contributions that were already announced. The province of Quebec is putting in $130 million into the project. The federal government has announced through the National Trade Corridor Fund $150 million. And the project has two phases, what we call the in-water phase and the land phase. For the in-water phase, we have our work already started on October 9, and the financing is close to being completely done. On the land side, what needs to remain to be done is the negotiation with the terminal operator that will be operating in. So this is why it's hard to answer those questions.
Well, it is and it isn't, right? I mean, it's not a hypothetical question because this project has been going long before the MPO existed, and it had to have some surety of funding. And if that was, enough surety to progress the project, it basically had to be all there, right? So now what is the point of, is the MPO now, I wanted to establish a baseline, right? So we could see the impact of the MPO and what is the influence there?
The impact of the MPO has been very important for the project because it put us in touch with all of the various, and Mrs. Farrell explained it really well. So, for example, the Bank of Infrastructure of Canada, the resources of the Port of Montreal and what they can bring to the table, and building a financial structure that will allow the port to deliver this major infrastructure while continuing its operation.
Okay, thank you. Does that include private equity?
That includes the Bank of Infrastructure of Canada, and if you think about the Port of Montreal as the proponent of the project, also our own investment into the project. The Port of Montreal is an autonomous. Yeah, we would be considered private equity in this particular case. Yeah.
Who referred the port project? Who the other way around, right? Who notified you that the port project had been referred to the MPO?
In our discussion with Transport Canada, with the various players that work it, we were referred to the MPO, and the MPO has graciously worked with us ever since.
The MPO has told us that Transport notified the MPO that they were going to refer it, so I wanted to see if there's continuity. Ms. Farrell, back to you. You had mentioned in previous testimony and then again today about the list of 500 projects being reviewed. I want to dig into this a little bit. We need to make sure that with all the different avenues into the MPO and at different levels of maturity, that we were able to detect favoritism. Inherently, there is some favoritism, but it needs to be on merit, not based on who you know and what your connections are and how good your communication is. So could you explain a little bit more about, will you publish a list of this 500, or will you publish a list of ones that do not proceed past the stage gates?
I apologize, my internet can you hear me? My internet keeps going in and out, so I'm not quite sure. I think your question was, will we publish the list of the 500, will we publish the list of the assessments, and then will we talk about how we picked different projects? We are 70 days old, and we're just, we have 30 people now furiously looking at everything, ensuring that there isn't favoritism, frankly, because my job as the head of the MPO is to ensure that projects that are of national interest or major projects contribute to the economy, the environment. Yeah, so, right. Yeah, so currently, of the 500 projects, we've assessed about 144. We've come down to the current list that has been published. We continue to have a number of projects that we are assessing. And frankly, the reason I'm smiling is the challenge is there are way more projects than there are people in the MPO at this point. And our job is to staff up accordingly and and be helpful to our proponents. I don't want to have so many projects in the MPO that it's all empty promises and we actually can't come through and fulfill the promise of the MPO. So we are, at this point, as we're assessing projects, we're trying to make sure the intake matches the people that we have here. We're trying to staff up in order to be important, and that's what we're doing.
Monsieur Saint-Pierre pour 5 minutes.
Over to Mr. Saint-Pierre for 5 minutes. Good morning. So the question is addressed to the port or the agency, but as in the context of the Copper Red Horse, you talked about a compensation plan. If I heard you well, 3 hectares to compensate the Lebeuf Island and Boucherville. So is this compensation, does it have the potential of increasing or maintaining the population of this Copper Red Horse? Really excellent question. This addresses the question of looking at the life of this fish at the Obeuf Island. We'll plant 2.9 hectares that will be doubled over 6 years, so about 6.2 hectares, which will be quadrupled over 15 years to 12.6 hectares. But we should understand that you have about 30,000 hectares in the river, which constitute the habitat of this fish. So the condition of the copper red horse, will it be improved? The Montreal Port will invest 17 million in this endangered species by 2030. And never has anyone invested this much in that fish species. And we should understand that this fish has a lifespan of about 35 years, and it is born in the Richelieu River. I don't know if you know that river, but there's no protection measures for the banks of that river, and where it spawns is very close to the banks, and that fish is born there, lives there for 2 years, and after 2 years it comes to feed at the Saint Laurent River, and when there's no more food, it returns to the Richelieu River, reproduces, and this reproduction only starts at the age of 10. And yes, it would increase its feeding habitat and eventually by 12 hectares. But do we need to work more in collaboration with all the stakeholders? Yes, because it's been 20 years now that this species is endangered. So I think we can work together from its birth to its growth and all through its lifespan in order to preserve it. Follow-up question. So this compensation plan, was it studied and validated by third parties? And if yes, which ones? I'm happy that my colleague here will talk about this. Yes, we discussed with Fisheries and Oceans. We also discussed with the Ministère de l'Environnement of Quebec, Environment Canada, and MPO requested expert opinions, and we also discussed with PSPC. And right now, what would be an executive summary of these assessments? Well, there's been many questions on infrastructure, so questions from an engineering standpoint. And we also talked about the grassbed and Environment Canada, because this area belongs to Environment Canada, and we talked to experts in fish species, and also we had these government departments involved. So MP for Honoré Mercier, so this includes that area, and so the Copper Red Horse is a part of that Prairie River habitat. So can you comment on the impact? Is the Contrecoeur project going to have any environmental impact? Because I'm thinking about my riding. Is there going to be an impact on the Prairie River? Well, address this quickly. No, there will be no impacts, but there will be positive benefits, and we should bear in mind that other projects which are not port extension projects that involve a work in the feeding area of the Copper Red Horse species, and so knowledge and the scope of this investment will help other projects in the eastern part of Montreal that are currently slowed down as a result of the fact that we don't have solutions as of now for the Copper Red Horse species. Maybe one last question before I run out of time. You mentioned that you had consulted the First Nations, the Ganawagi First Nations, and currently, are there any concerns or with regard to the Ganawagi First Nation or other First Nations with regard to this project and its impact on the Copper Red Horse? Well, we had several consultations with all the First Nations, including the Ganawagi. And over the past 10 years, they've raised their questions and concerns. They've had issues with regard to this project. And at the Montreal port, we ensured that all the questions, all the concerns were cataloged and addressed. And we worked in collaboration with them to ensure that they were satisfied with our approach. Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you. Now over to you, Mr. Baronet, for 2.5 minutes. Mr. Chair, just to come back to the topic of projects and alternative sites and compensation measures, you tabled for your permit request an assessment of alternative sites. When was this? When did you submit this? The assessment of alternative sites. Can you submit this to the Commission? The entirety of the documentation that you submitted in order to obtain a compensation permit. To your first question, you wanted to no, the law provides the obligation for you to assess alternative sites in order to secure a permit for endangered species. And you mentioned that in order to get this, you presented to Fisheries and Oceans a request for alternative sites. So can you maybe table this application with the alternative sites that were examined? Yes, of course. Thank you. And now I'm trying to understand this Section 86 of the Canadian law on impact assessments, which mentions that you need to indicate your intention and in a notification and inform the public. So if there's no alert, if there's no notice sent out, how then is the public invited to take part in a public consultation? So on a website of, I don't know how many 1,000 pages, and there's no information. So how were people invited to take part in this consultation?
So the requirement in Section 86 is that the notification is posted and invites public comment. If notices are posted in a certain way under the registry, there is a notification triggered. That's only a service that we've...
Je pense que j'ai plus de traduction.
Oh, je m'excuse.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing the interpretation. Carry on. So if notifications are published on certain sections or in a certain way in particular on our website, well, there was no notification. That's what I understood. Now, how then do you state that the public was invited, or how does the court consider that people were invited if they were not aware and that this was on a website which spans over, 10,000 pages or more?
Coming online in 2024. So prior to that, there was not notifications.
Okay. Donc, je relance ma question.
So I'd like to restate my question. So the port needed a good player from the corporate world. And so you see no comments and nobody was invited. The notification didn't work. This is nothing new. So I'd like to reiterate, are you ready to take the time to do things properly, to invite people to take part and to gather comments with regard to a project of this importance? Short response, please. Thank you, Mr. Bonang. My colleague explained to you, we met all the, we followed all the requirements, legislative requirements in our process, and we went beyond in terms of public consultations. We addressed significant number of questions. We had many comments during our discussion forums, and for us, the consultation is complete. Thank you, Ms. Gascon. And now for 5 minutes, over to you, Mr. Ross.
You talked about the federal and provincial contributions to finance this project. Was there a plan to borrow private money to finance the rest of this project?
So currently, the project is financed as follows. There's $130 million that comes from the provincial government, and there is $150 million that comes from the federal government. We know the cost of the in-water work. We have a fixed-priced contract, and that work has started on October 9. Our preliminary work has started.
Excuse me, I don't want to know the cost. I want to know the financing plans
So the
for
rest of
it.
the rest of the financing, that's what we are in negotiation now, and that's what we're working with the Major Project Office, and it involves both money from the Port of Montreal as well as working with the Bank of Infrastructure of Canada and working with a financial structure that will allow us to deliver the project in time in 2029.
Okay, and you talked about how old this project is. So there was a financing plan long before the Major Projects Office got involved.
So in terms of the project itself, it's like my predecessors bought the land in 1980. There were three big phases of how this project was kind of envisioned. The first time, it was land that was purchased for the existing terminal to be able to expand in Contrecoeur. So we worked with them. That was around 2020, 2019. And unfortunately, they could not come together on a financial approach to expand in Contrecoeur. In 2022, we launched an international process to see whether or not we could have a partner that would do both the land and the water side. And the result of this international call for offer was that the partners were interested, but were not interested in doing the water side. It's complex in Canada, the permitting, the consultation work, and it was not something that was deemed the private partner were interested. It was over 14 people that came.
I understand that. So, but I'm going to presume then that there was a financing plan long before the Major Projects Office got involved. And so this project got approved in 2021. There's only outstanding permits from DFO needed that the Major Projects Office will not help with, but the Major Projects Office will help with financing going forward. And that's going to take a number of different forms depending on the financing solution there. You talked a lot about the consultation with First Nations. How many impact benefit agreements are signed with Treaty First Nations and non-Treaty First Nations in this area?
Vous me permettrez, c'est une excellente question. Nous n'avons pas des...
Excellent question. We did not come up with any agreements with the First Nations on benefit sharing, but this didn't preclude them from giving a positive opinion with regard to the license and with regard to the project going ahead.
Technically not following the case law in terms of addressing rights and title, because you don't have an impact benefit agreement. Was there any accommodations made to them, either technical or economics?
Plusieurs, si vous me permettez.
With your permission, several amendments were made to the project on the basis of comments that were received from the First Nations, but also during public consultations before the agency. And in a nutshell, this project gained expertise from First Nations in order to establish the project that we have today. So we picked a different approach, but the First Nations supported us in writing under this project.
It wasn't consultation as per the High Court case of 2004, and there was no accommodation, especially under impact benefit agreements. So this kind of question might be irrelevant then. So did the Montreal Port Authority, addressing the treaty rights or the non-treaty rights in establishing this project?
Si vous permettez, je vous reviendrai de façon...
With your permission, I'll be more specific. And as part of this this project, we're respectful of the rights of the First Nations. But regard to our status as representatives of the Crown and the impact on different treaties, I think I would have to provide responses that I don't have with me here.
Written response, Mr. Chair?
Il nous fera plaisir de vous faire parvenir une réponse par écrit et détaillée.
It will be a pleasure to send you a detailed written response.
Et maintenant, la parole est à vous.
Sorry, Mr. Baudry. Over to you, Mr. Grant, for 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
Oui.
OK, merci.
5 minutes? Thank you.
Hear a little bit more about the economic of going through with this project of the expansion at Contrecoeur in terms of trade and trade with other countries. And kind of, I wonder when the last economic kind of analysis was done for the financial benefit to the port itself, as well as the province of Quebec or the region. Like, can you talk a little bit about why this is such an important project?
So I'll start, and I'll also pivot to my colleague who has a lot of the economic impact assessment and analysis that was done. So this will expand the Port of Montreal's capacity by 60%. The Port of Montreal is the major gateway for Europe, also India and Southeast Asia. We deal with 140 different countries. In the current situation, in the context, the geopolitical context that we live right now with the United States, as you are well aware, there are a lot of diversification efforts underway. So part of this analysis as well is that if only 6%, this is a small, modest number, 6% of cargo takes a different route than going through to the U.S., but go to the 140 country with whom we have agreement, a lot of it with Europe, of course, the Port of Montreal would be full very, very, very quickly. So the urgency to build this project has really come to light in the recent geopolitical context. So if our government, Prime Minister Carney, has talked about doubling the amount of exportation non-U.S., this would mean that there is a deficit of 7 million containers in this country to achieve this target within the next 10 years. So this phase of Contrecoeur is adding 1,150,000 containers. My colleague in Vancouver, I think it's roughly around 2.5. So there is still a deficit even after those two major projects going forward. So there's no doubt in my mind that the economic impact is massive. It's 400,000 jobs that's going to be supported, 10,000 jobs once the terminal is operational. And when you're looking at the value, it's the value of the goods in those boxes that are coming in and coming out. It's agricultural product, it's medication, it's dialysis, like all of the dialysis that comes from Germany, those products that goes into our hospital come to the Port of Montreal. It's fruits, it's vegetable, it's cars, it's, of course, all kinds of different goods that people need every day in their life. It's keeping the shelves full as well in store. So I'll turn over to you, Julien, maybe more pointedly on the economic impact.
So briefly, the first one to be benefiting from that terminal will be the exporters on the South Shore of Montreal. There's actually 600 exporters that are near the Port of Montreal in the future terminal. The agricultural companies that are also on the South Shore, because remember that Port of Montreal, 35% of our volume is actually food. And in many countries, in many areas of the world, we have a positive trade balance. For example, you will not find on this continent a port that have a trade balance positive with Asia. We do. 70% of our relationship with Asia to the Port of Montreal is actually export, 30% import, and actually our first trading partner is India. So not only on diversifying, but also on strengthening our trading relationship with Europe and future market like Africa and Southeast Asia, that project will allow those trade deal to be to bring some benefit to workers and also companies.
And if you've had a recent economic impact assessment done or whatever, do you have any numbers, or is there a report that could be submitted to the committee around kind of the economic benefits for Quebec or for the port specifically?
Of course, we'll share the summary. Important part is not only there are benefit impact in Quebec, but also in Ontario. Actually, 50% of our volumes at the Port of Montreal belongs to the Quebec market. 30% it's Ontario, but it's also the prairies. And lastly, the Midwest, but 90% of the economic impact of the Port of Montreal is done in Canada. Not only it creates high-paying job, but also it creates some redundancy and resilience into the supply chain. So be more than happy to share that analysis.
And what about for the port itself? Is it a for-profit entity?
So The Port of Montreal is a federal autonomous agency, which means that we generate revenue to be able to manage our operation, manage our maintenance, and manage a certain amount of growth. We are not for profit. We need to submit all of our information, but we are really there to serve Canadians. So we need to generate enough revenue to be able to maintain the asset, to do growth projects, to remain competitive and productive, but everything we do is reinvested into the port.
Thank you very much. Mr. Leslie, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Farrell, this project was referred to the MPO by the government a couple of months ago, and since then you've been assessing whether it should be designated as a project of national interest, but construction is slated to begin. So my question is, why the delay? If there is such urgency to designate, why the delay from the MPO?
So the MPO has two functions. Projects can be referred, and in that case, we work on what we call concierge service, either for regulatory or for the financing, or it can be assessed to see if it needs to be a project of national interest and designated. We do not see the project of Contrecoeur in that second category. Currently, our work with the Port of Montreal is on the financing.
They get referred for assistance. You're the concierge. You help them go to each department with the handout, try to get some money for the project. What do you actually need to approve then?
Well, what we do is the projects come in, we assess them against the 5 criteria under the Canada Building Act, which is strengthening our autonomy, resilience, and security, economic and other benefits, a high likelihood of success, advancing the interests of Indigenous peoples, and contributing to clean growth and our objectives with climate change. As well as we look at all of those criteria, we determine where they are in their development. Are they, if you look at Contrecoeur is already
interest stream. What exactly are do you have anything to approve?
We have.
That is a recommendation that this project have something done with it. If it's not national interest, have something else done with it?
In this particular case, so we have 2 functions where we have the function of working with projects that have been referred to ensure that they have all of the things that they need and then are financed and can continue through and be built and achieve their economic outcomes and their environmental outcomes. At the same time, there are.
What role is the MPO playing on projects that are referred to just simply by the government? Or like you just.
Well.
What are you actually doing?
Well, actually, what we're doing is ensuring that projects can be streamlined and can get to the finish line and can get built and can get their financing and their money. And in some cases, projects are of national interest and will need to be designated under the Canada Building Act. So far, there haven't been any of those projects.
Absolutely lowest hanging fruit, a project that is absolutely just ready to go and said, hey, we're here to help. We've put enough hurdles in the way, so we're here to try to fix this. But the government seems to be just sending projects directly to you like they did. So the minister has now said that they're thinking, we should slow down, stop referring so many projects. Is your office already swamped by the number of projects that have been handpicked by this prime minister that you cannot review projects that are being applied to be designated?
Well, actually, the projects that have been referred to our office, the proponents are very happy that they are being referred to the office and that we are working with them to help them move their projects along, for sure. And there are a lot of projects that would like to be referred. So we have a team that's very busy in ensuring that we do need, projects can, the proponents have to do their own work. They have to do their work on their regulatory, First Nations, and financing. But these particular projects here are major projects for Canada are, right.
This is not the national interest project stream. Now, you were recently in BC when the Prime Minister announced a slate of projects being referred to your office. Projects.
Correct.
You still haven't determined whether or not they meet your criteria, and the government hasn't approved any of these projects. Did you actually review these projects before the announcement, or did you in fact make any recommendations, or did the Prime Minister make recommendations to you in advance?
I did review the projects and I did make recommendations, and the role of the Major Projects Office is to work on two streams. We work on streams of projects that are referred to us that can be advanced and get going and get building. And as well, we work on projects to determine if they should be in the stream of projects of national importance that would be designated. We have two functions and two roles.
Projects of national interest. Could you identify what those are and why you're putting a cap of one or two of them?
I'm not putting a cap at all on one or two of them. I'm assessing all of them for that criteria. Some projects don't need that. They're far enough advanced, and other projects may need that, and we're working on a number of projects to see if there are projects that will fit in that category. And that'll happen in the next year or so.
For 5 minutes, the floor is yours, Mr. Fanjoy.
Thank you. This question is for the Port of Montreal. How is the Major Project Office making a difference in the progress of the Contrecoeur project? You noted that the land was purchased in 1980. But I sense that there's more momentum at this point. How is that? How has the Major Projects Office made a difference?
Thank you, Mr. Fanjoy. I'm just going to talk a little bit. I've been a public servant all my life before I joined the port. Director General of Marine Safety and Security. As a public servant, I look at my laws. I had 7 law to administer, 280 regulations standard, and we look at our hat, like the mandate that are given to us and enable us to do things through our law. And each department does it in this way. What has changed for us with the arrival of Ms. Farrell's and her team is that often when you're looking at it from a department, you're looking at it with a bit of a silo. I don't want to, but it is a little bit of a silo. And so it's difficult to bring all parties together. And when there are issues, to bring everyone together, task a working group to look at it and say, how do we undo this? How do we move forward within each of our legislation? How do we advance? And this is what Mrs. Farrell and her team is bringing with us, is that the project is a priority. When there are issues, we get people together. There is a communications subcommittee. There is a finance subcommittee. There is all kinds of subcommittee where all the departments and everybody is tasked to find solution. But not just find solution that will allow us to deliver the project on time and on budget, that will provide the best structure for the financing that will have least impacts on Canadian taxpayers, that will deliver this infrastructure in accordance to the business case with the best partner possible. So that's what changed with us. It changed our life, the Major Project Office, because it brought everybody together and focused. And that's why I appreciate being with this project. It's rigorous, it's hard, it's tough. We have tough discussion, but it has changed the way that we advanced with this project.
Okay, thank you. Given the importance economically of Contrecoeur, are we satisfied that we can do this while protecting habitats and the environment around the Richelieu rivers and St. Lawrence River? And if there is anything more that can be done, what might that be?
I believe so wholeheartedly. I believe that we can do a high economical impact project while respecting our duty and our fiduciary duty as citizens towards the environment. And this is a greenfield project, sir. So it's electrified. It's mostly done, like most of the cargo will move by train. In Montreal, it's almost 65% by truck, 35% by train. Contrecoeur, you're flipping it. So it's much more by train. It's electrified. electrified. It's a terminal that is modern. It's built towards its generation, the smallest footprint possible that yield the maximum capacity. So we are building a terminal of the future, a green terminal. We've secured our power with hydro, and most of the terminal, if not all, will be fully electrified. So it is a really great project that can demonstrate also the leadership of Canada in terms of how we're going to build this infrastructure. The other thing that people don't know is that the Port of Montreal is a destination port. So when the ships comes in, they fully discharge and fully reload. So every time you get a train coming in, it's full. Every time the train comes out, it's full. That's why it's such a strong model and platform that yield the greatest benefits in terms of GHG emission as well.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
It's almost a minute. You're giving us almost an extra minute. Wow, that's nice. Mr. Bonnet, à vous la parole, 2.5 minutes.
Over to you for 2.5 minutes, Mr. Bonnet. Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the port representatives, you talked about support from the First Nations for the compensation project, as it were. Do you have that information, notably with regard to the consultations with the First Nations, with regard to the consultation compensation project when this happened? And also, do you have written formal support from the First Nations with regard to this compensation project? It would be a pleasure to provide you with a detailed list of what was sent to us, notably the entirety of work sessions, and the compensation project was part of several dozens of work sessions with First Nations. So we will provide you with these documentation without any issues. So when were these consultations held? Over the past months before securing the authorization that was sent to us. I'd like to add that consultations was things when when we got approval in 2021. So consultations with the compensation plan for the grass beds of the Copper Red Horse. So. And I think there was a document that was completed in the month of October for the compensation project. You're talking about the pre-project for the design of infrastructure? Well, because you're talking about October, is it October 2024 or 2025? 2025, was there a document for the compensation project? Do you have the heading of this document? I'll check. But you don't have any document with regard to compensation projects for October? For October 2025. Maybe you could tell me what document you're referring to. AECOM right now is in charge of following up this infrastructure. So maybe you might want to give me the heading of this document. So are you talking about day-to-day follow-up? Well, the what you had before securing the license. Because there was a document from AECOM in the month of October, and then you're telling me that consultations were held before this document became available. So some of these documents from AECOM were subject to consultations, and some of these documents were updated in order to allow us to secure the licenses required from oceans and fisheries and oceans. Right? So.
Given that we've understood today that the Port of Montreal was not expecting this referral, they were told 24 hours in advance, I'm curious, in an effort to be transparent of this new office, if you would be willing to share the communications between the Transport Department and/or Minister's Office and the MPO in the lead up to that referral, as well as between the Department of Fisheries and Oceans and/or ECCC, if they had any involvement prior to this decision to refer this project.
Actually, Jeff, you were, I was just starting at that time. Do you want to take that question?
Sure. Thank you very much. The assessments of all the projects were done throughout the summer period, and that summer period had a significant number of projects that were being looked at. And as the office has reached its point at which the first projects were announced, for obvious reasons, there was a lot of attention on a number of projects that were being looked at. And the number of projects greatly exceeds the ability for us.
Are you willing to do that for this committee to do?
There's a working group of teams of people across the federal government, public servants, that did the assessments against the projects, against the 5 factors that then kind of led to the recommendations. The projects have been announced. So the Prime Minister announced the projects. They were referred. The projects are on the website, and all of the information about the projects are on the website.
As the individual that moved this motion from my colleague from Bloc Quebec Bloc and take my remaining time.
Merci. Merci, Monsieur le Président. Il reste combien de temps, Monsieur le Président?
Thank you. Do we have enough time, Mr. Boulier? 3 minutes. Thank you very much. So, for the Port of Montreal, I think I'd like to just ask that you ask the question and allow the respondents time to respond. So, because up to now I've let this go, but I'd like to be more severe because I've want everyone here. Please allow the witnesses the time to address, because this impacts interpretation. Thank you. Well, I equally like the witnesses to address the questions. So you're talking about cutting down about 13,000 trees, and there's going to be impacts on the ground, on the soil that will be contaminated. Did you get any licenses from the city in order to give you permission to work on the grounds that will be contaminated as a result of this project? Thank you. As the persons authorized by government, because this work is conducted at the request of the port, and bearing in mind the Canadian Constitution, we don't have to ask any municipal authorizations because we are equally working on federal lands. So you have no intention of securing licenses from municipalities for your activities. In the same way as all Canadian port authorities working as a Crown Corporation, we really don't need to do that. And as a result, we would not have to seek any authorization from the municipalities. All right, thank you. So I consider here that you have no intention of redoing any consultations, because the previous one did not lead to any comments, and you're refusing once more to conduct fresh consultations. Yes or no? There's no reason to conduct any new consultations when the rules were followed. So with your work on the project, did you start today? Well, work started today, and we're starting with temporary. Which area are you referring to? The essential habitat that was designated. And yes, work has started, and we have preparatory work that has started, and the MPO license was secured in October. Mr. Chair, bearing in mind this situation, I'd like to table a motion because I believe that this is important. Would you like me to present my motion? Well, considering, and this would be my motion, I'm addressing the clerk now, considering the technical challenges that were experienced by the Montreal Port Administration in order to expose and inform people of the notice of intention to conduct consultations with regard to your project to extend the port, and especially in view of the absence of an alert to inform the public of public consultations. Of the committee is requesting the suspension of all work currently being conducted in the essential habitat of the copper whitehorse, and to request fresh consultations. And to request fresh consultations on the compensation phase. So could I maybe ask that we suspend for a few minutes, because we did not have a chance to read out the motion. You should receive it in a few minutes. So maybe we would like to take a few moments to read through the motion. Yes, you will receive it.
the motion? Yes, Mr. Saint-Pierre?
Oui, je poser la question en français.
I would like to ask the question in French and in English.
To issue this motion. I'm reading the last paragraph that says the committee demand the suspension of work. Does this committee, and I'm a new MP, does this committee have jurisdiction to make such an order, and if so, under which standing order?
Are you asking a question to the chair? Are you addressing your question towards the chair, or are you addressing your question?
Je pourrais peut-être poser la question.
Towards the MP who's brought forward this motion.
Je pose la question au député
My question is addressed to the MP. Mr. Bonat, your response? Well, as formulated, the committee is requesting the suspension of work, and this work was authorized by Fisheries and Oceans, based on a license on endangered species that are not part of the registry of endangered species right now. In order for this license to be valid, it needs to be published in this registry. But what I'm hearing is that work that's being conducted in the essential habitat of an endangered species when the license is not even published. So beyond this, with regard to this license that we've not seen, I think the person in charge here is Fisheries and Oceans, and I see that there's not been enough consultation. People have not been informed that there's going to be work that would destroy the essential habitat of the copper-red horse. And for me, it's not complicated. I'm just asking that things be done properly while respecting the rules around consultation, and that it's been done properly. And also this motion, if we say, state as a committee that we have concerns and it's important that no work be done without these consultations being conducted, well then Fisheries and Oceans should be the ones concerned here. We should then say that since the port is not does not want to do this themselves, because they could do this, they could say that, well, we realize that there were no comments and this has to do with an endangered species. We are concerned about this. We'll suspend our work and we'll conduct real consultation. But then, I think the port can act, the Fisheries and Oceans can act as well. But coming to whether we can stop work, I'll leave you with that question, but I think people and government have that possibility. And the thing that I'm concerned about is this emblematic species that you find only in Quebec, the copper-red horse that is currently on the threat of extinction as a result of these activities. I understand and I share your concerns. Thank you for your comments, dear colleague. But it's more about, my question is more to do with the process and less so with the content. And can we as a committee, can we act as judges or can we order authorities to do anything? To my knowledge, there's no standing order addressing this, but if you know any section in the standing order that gives us, that confers such powers on us, I'd be glad if you could share this with us. Now, our committee is sovereign. The motion, what we are asking in this motion is we're asking that this work be suspended. And as a committee, we have that right to require that this work be suspended because we have a number of people within government who can address this and say, well, we can do this or not. But our responsibility as a committee is to express our concern with the current situation with an endangered species, which is the copper-red horse. And a number of authorities in government can address this. Well, because I'm a new MP and I'm trying to just understand what the processes and procedures are here and to understand, I read chapter 20 of the rules of procedure, and I don't know if we necessarily have that authority. And I'm glad if someone could correct me here if I'm wrong. Mr. Chair, I think as a committee, we have the power to request something as a committee, and we can ask anything. What we're asking here is simply that they suspend work. We are not the ones who are going to enforce this, but we are concerned, and as a result, we're asking for a suspension. Mr. Van Joy?
This motion, which I concur, I don't believe this committee has the authority to stop work on a project that is currently underway. But I think that I'm curious to see where this goes, because ultimately what we're looking at is a project that is strategic to Canada's economic future. We're talking about an expansion of the port of Montreal by somewhere between 40 to 60%. I don't know how we diversify our markets internationally without the capacity to ship goods. And this is an example. Land was purchased in 1980 before some people around this table were born, and nothing happened. And what we're seeing now is progress. It's progress that will lead to jobs, will provide new markets and expanded markets for Canadian businesses that will help to ensure that our economy meets this moment, this challenging moment that all of our ridings and all 343 ridings in the country are facing right now. So I think that how MPs and committee members choose to vote on this motion, if it is even in order, will tell a tale. And so I'd like us to get to that very quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Fanjoy. Pass the mic to the clerk to give us a clear picture on what position this committee has, especially with respect to the motion that is on the table, and that will give us a better idea of where to go next. The floor is yours, Mr. Clerk. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I would refer members to Standing Order 108 in the standing orders. The committee is empowered to examine and inquire into any matter that is within the committee's mandate or that is referred to it by the House of Commons. And it is empowered in that regard to report from time to time, as well as to send for persons, papers, and records. So it is within the power of the committee to examine this piece of public policy and to make recommendations by reporting to the House. If the committee were to adopt the motion that it is currently debating, then it would entail a resolution of the committee making a recommendation, and the committee would be empowered to report this recommendation to the House of Commons and to request a written government response pursuant to Standing Order 109. The power of the committee to examine, to inquire, and to report does not include the power to compel the government to take any particular action. If there's any additional information that members require regarding administration or procedure, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Monsieur le Président, je pense que c'est évident qu'on peut.
Mr. Chair, I think it's clear that we can adopt this motion if the issue is not resolved for you. The clerk is here and just confirmed. Honorable colleagues, my honorable colleague talked about the economic issues surrounding this particular project. We are completely in tune with you. There are a number of economic issues underway right now, but the issue is not the economic challenges. The issue is whether we're able to develop or build infrastructure that are consistent and take into consideration species, endangered species. We're not discussing the value or the worth of these projects. We're discussing in committee, saying that there are a number of red flags, and we want to make sure that all of this is taken into consideration before the project goes ahead. And so I'd like to invite you to support this motion and to have further consultations. It should have been done properly, this consultation. consultation. That was not done from all indications. And I think that from witness testimony, it is clear. And tomorrow morning, the Port of Montreal could state, I am launching my consultation notice, and in 30 days, it will be concluded. I'm sorry, Mr. Bonin, we cannot immediately dive into debate because there's something I need to do before that. I just gave you a few minutes to address the question, and now you're entering into debate. So before we carry on debate on the motion, I'd like to thank the witnesses for appearing here today. I'd like to thank you, and you're now dismissed, free to leave. Thank you.
Back to the debate.
Yes, sir.
Donc, on retourne au débat.
So we will resume debate on the motion tabled by Mr. Bonnet. I'll leave it up to you to conclude your thoughts. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll conclude just by reiterating what I mentioned, that tomorrow the port can decide to table its notice of consultation, and in 30 days it will be done. Specialized groups, and it's not out of pleasure that I'm saying that it's important to have these consultations, that external independent specialist groups that are keeping an eye on this project should tell us maybe whether it makes sense or not, and also to discuss the avoidable impacts that could arise as a result of this project. My intention here is to ensure transparency. And this is a long-standing project. They've been talking about this since 2012, and I don't see how we can accept that the port should skirt around consultations in just 30 days, and it should be clear, and everyone should be reassured that we have the information. This is not a project that was fast-tracked unnecessarily. It's been done according to the book, and we need to do those consultations. So, and we'll move on to vote.
All those opposed?
Defeated.
Defeated. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.